And just like that, we're back. It has been just under 2 months. No, just over 2 months, because I think our last episode was December 14th or 15th. After Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, so just over 2 months.
Just over 2 months. And we're back for season 2. And yeah, it was touch and go for a while. We were about to be banned by every major government around the world. But Formula One philosophy pulled through in lawsuits. And that is why Sean and I are here today.
Yeah, I don't think old Benny there likes us very much.
No, and Gatsby's tirade at, what was it? Cornell University? Yeah. We almost lost our right to free speech because of him. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. As we said at the end of last season, it's just going to be the two of us, no producer. We are taking resumes, and we'd like to see who would like to take on the challenge. But from this point forward, you can find us exclusively at Spotify and YouTube. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for the shares. Thanks for subscribing. We're up to a good amount of subscribers now.
I've been noticing over the last little while we've had a good number of subscribers roll in on YouTube.
Formula One is popular, and you and I dipped our toe into the Formula One space, and I think we're being rewarded for it finally.
We'll see if we start making money.
Let's hope, because neither of us want to go to work anymore. I think that's safe to say. Well, I shouldn't speak for you. I don't, so.
No, that's fair. I just don't know that I'm going to be able to make money with you doing this.
Thanks. Yeah, okay.
Might cost me money.
Well, yeah. Let's put aside when we start making money on this podcast, we'll put aside about $100 a month for lawsuits. Maybe more.
So that'll be going very quickly.
Very quickly. Anyways, season 2, 2 minutes it took us to introduce everything and get going. That's pretty good. We're off to a great start.
If you say so.
How did you enjoy your last 2 months?
It's been busy.
Christmas, family.
The last couple weeks have been hectic, both at work and here. The kids have been sick. The last week has actually been the closest thing to being back in COVID that I've experienced in a long time.
Ooh, so like everybody got sick all at once then.
Yeah, with the exception of William. He went to school. Everybody else was at home.
Jeez. Well, I hope you guys are feeling a bit better.
Yeah, we're getting there. I didn't get sick. It was touch and go for a little bit, but I managed to fight it off. But with the kids being home, it takes more than one person to deal with that.
And from what I hear, kids, especially as we get older, kids' sickness just affects us like exponentially.
Oh, they're germ warfare factories. Once they start going to daycare and school, it's unbelievable the shit they bring home.
The Allies should have just sent in a bunch of kids to German schools during World War II. Could have avoided a lot of deaths.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep that in mind, everybody. Anyways, I'm glad you're okay. I'll be praying for you and your family. But yeah.
How about you, Nick?
Well, Christmas, man, the snow here in Ontario. I think I feel for everybody in the northeast of America too, and I imagine the southwest or Detroit area must have been pummeled too.
Yep. They didn't get quite as much as we got, but they've got a whole bunch of other issues to deal with.
Like?
Flooding.
Oh, yeah.
It's like 3 feet of water.
Yeah, I would imagine that's South Dakota and Iowa right now, right?
I have no idea about that. I just know that a good portion of Dearborn and Detroit got flooded.
Really? That north? Jesus. Because usually it's the central, right? Not like Detroit usually gets what we get or what Windsor gets.
Yeah, just to be clear, I don't know why this happened. For all I know, it could have been a water main break or something, but there's a lot going on down there.
Prayers up for Detroit because, they've never gone through any hardships. But yeah, that's messed up. Usually that far north, you don't have to deal with that, but we hope you guys are okay. So we got a lot of cool preseason stuff coming up right now. Just a few episodes before we get into the season, which is T-minus 7 plus, so 21 days away, 3 weeks away.
How do you figure?
March 16th, right? Is the first race?
The season starts at testing, Nick.
Fine.
The season starts at the launch, which has already been done.
What did you think? Did you watch any of that?
I caught the highlight reel. And if that was the highlights of the night, I don't think anybody who watched that should have wasted their time.
And money. If it's in the O2 Arena in London, that's easily a $500 ticket. Easily.
Oh, I'm sure it was more than that. It's an F1 event, Nick.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't know who Jack Whitehall was. Was that Christian Jacks who introduced him?
Who else? Christian Jacks.
Is it Christian Jacks? Who's the announcer for Formula1.com with David Coulthard?
Alex Jakes.
Alex Jakes, damn it. Bad start, everybody. But anyways, yeah, it was 9 out of 10 teams were like, we're waiting for 2026 and RB. RB with a beautiful livery.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos to them.
Yeah. Although I did love the comment that was made by, what's this guy's name? The MC there that you just mentioned.
Jack Whitehall.
Jack Whitehall. As soon as they unveiled that, he broke out the turkey teeth comment.
What's that?
You don't know what turkey teeth are?
Well, I remember it was the 2021 Turkish Grand Prix where they did the white Red Bull. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing it has something to do with that.
No. Turkey teeth is a British thing. Basically, it's a euphemism for really bright white veneers that are usually done for dirt cheap in Turkey. So apparently it's a thing in the UK. People go to get their teeth fixed in Turkey, and it's fairly affordable, but very obvious.
It's kind of like an offhanded slur, and considering...
yes.
I was just going to say, considering Mohammed Sulayem this offseason really cracked down on swearing, maybe Jack Whitehall should get a fine from the FIA for that.
Well, did you hear Gordon Ramsay's take?
Did not.
Whitehall asked him, "What's your take on it?" And he basically came out and said, "Fuck it, let him swear."
Sean, you've just been fined by the FIA.
Sure.
You're going to have to sit out a race.
Won't be the first time.
Mm-hmm. What a stupid rule.
We'll see if they enforce it.
I think they will, to make it interesting. We're going to talk about this soon. I think they may have to, for reasons we will discuss in a bit.
I'll save my comment for when we discuss it.
Okay. Yeah, we got a lot ahead of us. This is part 1 of our 2-part predictions. So we're doing 10 to 6th this episode. Next week you will hear 5th to 1st. I'm just going to say off the bat, and we'll get into it, that this was one of the hardest lists I made. The hardest list was last year when we did the top 10 movies and albums. But this, I went back and forth a few times going over it in my head. I've been chewing on this the past month. I think I have my list. I checked it twice. Everybody's naughty and nobody's nice from 10 to 6th, in my opinion. Saint Nick is bringing the gifts.
This is going to be interesting because I don't even know if I remember all the drivers that are on the grid this year.
Well, you don't have to worry. We're just doing teams.
I know, but it's inevitably going to come up.
Well, I'll be here to remind you. That's why we're a team.
There we go.
Because when I have no idea what the hell any part of the car is, you help explain it. So if you're going to forget a driver, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, it kind of worries me a bit, but anyway.
All right. 10-minute introduction. Good on us. Sean, you can do the honors. We'll do what we always do. So you'll do 10, and then I'll do 10-9. You'll do 9-8, and so on, and we'll stop at 6. So without further ado, these are our 2025 F1 season predictions for the Constructors. This is where we think all 10 teams are going to end up. Once again, part 1, 10 to 6. Sean, have at it. Who is your number 10?
This is a hard one. I think it's going to be Sauber.
That's what you're locking in?
I'm going to put that simply because why would they bother? Audi's coming in next year. Their lineup isn't great. Let's be honest. They've made a better livery than last year.
Oh, is
that car looks better.
I like it. I'll be honest.
It's a little boring in my opinion, but it's something. So they're still just Sauber, Kick, Steak, whatever the fuck they're calling themselves.
They should call themselves Saudi this year. Sauber Audi. That's what I'm going to call them.
That actually may be one of the better ideas you've had, especially because I don't think any of their current title sponsors are related to the Saudis at all.
They have green and black, though. Which is...
No, but that's why I'm saying it's genius, because Saudi does a lot to endorse F1 teams through companies that aren't blatantly Saudi. Like, you used to have cars like, was it Williams when Keke Rosberg drove with them that was just sponsored by Saudi Arabia? They've stopped that, and it's now Aramco and some of these other big companies. We all know what they are, but they've stopped short at just putting Saudi Arabia on the side of the car. So, yeah, why shouldn't Sauber do that?
They may still go bankrupt. Like, Sauber may go bankrupt throughout this season. They've done that before, so they may have to just be bought out by the Saudi Arabian royal family with Saudi on the front.
Oh, fuck, I just remembered. I'm wrong. Because Audi just sold something like 30% of the F1 team to the Saudis, I believe.
Oh, I thought it was Bahrain.
It might be. No, because Bahrain, I believe, owns McLaren.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we're doing our research on the fly here. Actually, yeah, if it is bought out by the Saudi royal family, why not call it Saudi just for this year?
Right? Yeah, Bahrain is McLaren.
I'll just speak to your prediction. It makes a lot of sense, right? Like you're saying, like why put any effort in if you are getting ready for 2026?
Qatar.
Yeah,
Qatar bought a stake in Audi.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just adding to your point while you were researching. But yeah, this is a safe pick, I think. I think you're not wrong to pick it. It's just if you wanted to have a bold prediction, but they don't really have much development going on. 2 lackluster drivers. One with a bit of potential, in my opinion, but not McLaren's opinion, like you've talked about.
Who's driving for him? Hulkenberg and...
Bortoletto, who was... We talked about it in the second last episode, that they just gave him up for free.
Yeah.
It's a safe pick.
Yep.
Do you have anything else to add?
I'd like to see them not be pinned to the bottom. They got, what, 1 or 2 points last year?
They got 4 one-point finish. And as we talked about in that episode, it was a situation of circumstance. There was a virtual safety car instead of a full safety car. Zhou was way ahead of everybody, held on to it.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I just didn't remember how many points it was.
They should have had more. Like, I think this year they're not going to have their pit stop issues. Like, Bottas was probably screwed out of points in Bahrain.
At least 3 races.
Yeah, Bahrain, Japan, definitely.
And China.
Yes, well, gearbox issue, which happens.
Still, but...
Yeah, but 2 races with pit stops. Like, he was ahead of it. He was in 7th in Japan. Goes into pit before everybody else has a 40-second pit stop. Like,
yep.
Poor guy. Might have changed the course of his career, that pit stop.
Oh, but didn't you hear he's come home now?
So I'm expecting an ass picture of Valtteri Bottas with a Mercedes shirt.
No, Toto's banned that.
Oh, thanks.
Valtteri can't release his nude calendar anymore.
Thank God. If he just went to work last year, like we said preseason, if he just worked hard, he might have turned that team around. He has so much talent.
He got paid millions of dollars to do absolutely nothing and run around with a mullet and no clothes on.
And a blonde mustache. He's Australian now. Take away the Finnish flag, please.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. So that's your 10. Saudi.
I'm changing the name officially on our list here. They are Saudi.
Sauber Audi 2025. Saudi.
Even though Audi has nothing to do with them at the moment.
And only is really going to have 30% of the team when they do, right? Because they've sold, like you said, they sold some of the full share.
They've sold the equity. Audi's running it, right? So even now, Audi owns the team. They just haven't branded it because they're not adding anything to it. So Sauber won't go bankrupt because Audi owns it and they're funding it.
I'll just say this. I hope they come back in some form. Sauber eventually. Like a Sauber Toyota doesn't scare anybody, you know, in 2030.
But how long has Sauber been around? They've been in F1 since the 90s.
93.
And they've been on the verge of bankrupt a dozen times. They've changed names 24 times, and Sauber is still there. Peter Sauber is one of the... I don't even know how to put this. He's always found a way to keep that company going. And even now, he has no stake in the company. It's been completely sold. So just Sauber by name, he still floats around. So that team isn't going anywhere. That is going to be, after everything is all said and done and all these teams have changed hands 10 times over, Sauber will still be there. I don't see them ever ending.
And actually, as I'm thinking about it, because speaking of Toyota, didn't they have a partnership with Haas last year, Sauber? Sort of. They had like a loose connection, so they may continue on with Haas in some form.
Sauber?
Yeah. They had like a relationship, if I remember correctly, last year.
They may have been sharing some details or some technical resources, but I can't recall.
All right. You ready for my number 10?
Yep.
I just want to remind everybody, I'm swinging for the fucking fences this season with my predictions.
All right, Ferrari.
That's a you. That was you last year. This is me. I'm similar to that. I'm going to be the you of this year, but I'm going to be slightly more realistic. Not very, but slightly. My number 10 is going to be Racing Bulls this year.
Oof.
That is a bold prediction.
Did you see the car?
It's beautiful. But often, beauty masks underlying issues.
Do you think I'm looking at how beautiful the car is?
Okay, so then what are you thinking?
I'm going to save that for my prediction of Racing Bulls.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to say it right off the bat. It's not necessarily a lack of talent, because Yuki's on this team. And we've seen Yuki pull this team from the depths 2 years ago. Last year, the only reason they were in 8th is because of Yuki.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I'm saying that's not going to happen this year is internal politics. Neither Red Bull nor Racing Bulls really want either Hadjar or Yuki to succeed, in my opinion. And yeah, you'll say, oh, why wouldn't Racing Bulls want their drivers to succeed? I would like to remind everybody of what happened to Nick DeVries. And Nick DeVries did a amazing interview for Formula1.com a week ago, and I suggest everybody reads it, where he talks about the internal politics in the team. So he came in with specific goals. If you remember correctly, he was supposed to be the leader. Everybody believed in his talent and potential. And that was at a time when Yuki was on the rocks in F1. So they really thought De Vries was going to step in and just take over. That didn't happen. But De Vries was telling everybody recently, he was given goals in the boardroom, in the driver briefings with, what was it, Toro Rosso at the time, or AlphaTauri. And they would say, you're doing good. Keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing. You're going to get there. And then he would go after races, and the media would say, do you feel that your position with the team is in jeopardy? And he would go back to AlphaTauri and be like, what's happening here? Why am I being pressured why is my seat being pressured right now? It's because if you look back then, Horner didn't want him, made it clear he didn't want him, and Marco pushed him through into the seat. I think Horner did that to screw with Marco's reputation, to say, see, this was Marco's idea, and look how it failed. And I think we're in a similar situation this year with Hadjar and Yuki, because what happens if either of them succeed? And that's a legitimate question if you want to chime in. What happens if either of them succeed? Where do they go?
They've got nowhere to go.
Exactly. Where does Yuki go?
Yuki's out of F1 this year as far as I'm concerned.
And I know, and it's ridiculous. Because if he could have at least gone out as a Red Bull driver. And he may have failed. But at least he would have had his chance. He could have held his future in his own hands.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, he really just has nowhere to go. And I think in a way, like what I talked about with De Vries, I think there's going to be some background sabotage. Because if Hadjar succeeds, where does he go? He maybe stays at AlphaTauri another year. Maybe. Sorry, whatever it is now. Not B-Carb. Racing Bulls. Racing Bulls, yeah. Maybe. But they've already anointed Arvid Lindblad, or however you say his name, talking about his exploits in Oceania this offseason. For everybody who's that's wondering, just type into Google, DuckDuckGo, or Sean and I's personal favorite, Yandex, the Russian search engine.
Nick doesn't speak for me ever. I just have to put that out there.
It was a joke. Anyways, and just look up Arvin Lindblad Oceania offseason. And you will see he is being anointed as the next Max Verstappen in Red Bull's eyes. They see him as the one who's closest to Max. I think because of the way everything's lining up, there's not going to be a real chance for Hadjar or Yuki to do anything special. I think they're going to start fucking with them in a way. Development's been going backwards on this team since mid last season. They weren't listening to Yuki in the second half. They were trying to help Liam look good. They were trying to help Daniel look better. It was both lost causes. I think Yuki can only do so much, and I don't think Hadjar can do anything. And I think we're going to see him towards the back. If not for a late season surge in 2023, they would have finished 10th by far. And I think this time around, they're going to make something like that happen. At least Red Bull does, because it's in Horner and Marco's interest to get rid of Yuki cleanly. Like, he's not good enough. That's why we're not sponsoring him anymore. That's why Honda doesn't have to pay for him anymore. We're done with Honda. And I think Horner wants to see Hadjar fail. Yes, they're separate teams, but I think RB is going to rely heavily on Red Bull, and because unfortunately they're mostly ex-Ferrari rejects, which Ferrari non-rejects aren't exactly good engineers. So that's my thought. I don't think Hadjar is going to do very good. I think Yuki will be in a bind essentially. I don't think he'll be allowed to do that good. And that's where my head's going. I'm thinking they're just going to be last simply because of internal politics and ineptitude. One of the three worst teams. It was Williams, which has a solution going forward, Aston Martin, which has now Newey, and Racing Bulls. Those were the three worst teams. Current events predict future trends, so I think Racing Bulls at the back. Sorry for that long-winded answer.
We expect nothing else from you, Nick.
This time I kept it pretty on point and didn't just ramble, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Any rebuttal, or do you want to just move on to the next team?
I'm going to move on to my 9 because, like I said, I have some thoughts about Racing Bulls, but I'm going to save it for my prediction of where they are.
Okay, so I'll put my 9, and then you can do your 9-8.
Sure.
My 9 is going to be Sauber Audi. For the simple fact that the last 3 seasons, so 2022, 2023, and 2024, the team that we thought would be the worst ended up not. Nobody saw Williams after 2021 being that bad. They ended up finishing last in 2022. No, everybody thought Sauber, V-Carb, whatever they were, AlphaTauri was going to be the worst in 2023, ended up being Haas. Last year we all thought Haas, it was Sauber. So I think they're gonna escape the last place in the constructors. They got Binotto and now Aluni Bravi and Jonathan Wheatley. So they got an engine specialist in Binotto, aerodynamic, I don't want to say specialist, but someone who apprenticed under Newey in Wheatley. Aluni Bravi's not bad. I think this team will turn around slowly. I don't think they want to finish last, those three. I think they want their reputation a little better going into 2026. I think they'll be able to do something. And Hülkenberg thrives in this situation where there's nothing expected of him in a car that's decently being upgraded, just like Haas last year. So I think he'll do okay. I don't think he's going to get many points, definitely not as much as last year, but I think he'll do all right. And that's my thought with Sauber. Any points you want to make on that?
Yeah. Your thinking is a little flawed. So Binotto, fine. He's a good technical person. He's not there in a technical role. He knows engines, so what? They're using Ferrari engines. Okay, might have a bit of a benefit there. Sure. Jonathan Wheatley didn't do anything under Newey. Jonathan Wheatley was a sporting director for Red Bull. Non-technical role.
Is he doing? And he's going to be team principal for
right
Saudi. Okay.
So it's still a good move, and I think it has benefits for Sauber because he was sporting director for Red Bull, and now he's going to be running the team. And anytime Horner wasn't available, or the next in line basically to Horner was Wheatley, so the team worked. And I think Jonathan Wheatley was part of that, so he'll at least be able to pull them together, hopefully, as a winning team. winning used loosely in that case.
Improving team.
But yeah, don't expect them to do anything earth-shattering with the car that looked absolutely terrible last year.
Yeah, and you went into it a few times where I think it was you were saying the chassis or the suspension was just, I think it was the chassis was just rocking at times in ways it shouldn't have.
It was just visually too soft. I don't know how you could set up a race car like that rolls that much.
They were getting in the right direction towards the end of last season. That's my thought process. So I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt that they will pull something together. They're not, like you said, not going to be earth shattering this season. 9th is nothing to be proud of, but it's at least not last in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you for clarifying Wheatley. From my understanding, I thought Wheatley had some engineering pedigree, but I guess not.
He does, but he's not responsible for designing those Red Bull cars. That wasn't his job.
And even if he was, it would be nowhere near the level of Newey.
Right.
So I'm not. That's what I'm saying. I'm not expecting much, but I'm just not expecting last.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Team Hulkenberg this year. I'm going to be cheering for him every race because I don't want them to finish last. I have my reputation at stake here, so I am on Team Hulk. Also, I think Bortoleto, out of all of them, I think we're underestimating him. He's not going to be a world beater. I just don't think he's definitely going to be better than Behrman and Lawson in a real sense, because he's been better than them throughout his entire junior career. So Antonelli to me is a wild card, and Doohan anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's my thought.
Okay.
So who is your number 9?
This is a hard one, because after hearing you rant, it's reminding me of who some of these drivers are on these teams, and yeah, it gets a little frightening for a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
I had one in mind, but now I don't think that's such a ridiculous pairing compared to some of the other ones.
I'm intrigued to see where you go with this.
I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say Williams.
Wow.
I think Sainz hasn't come out very confidently lately in some of the things that he said. So my feeling is this year we're going to have a very competitive season like we had last year. A lot of teams scored a lot of points. Sauber was the only one that really didn't. So this year, I think we're going to get a grid that is potentially mixed up, and you see teams in places that you didn't expect to see them, but it doesn't mean that they're not scoring lots of points. We won't see the runaways that we've seen, so we won't have teams at 600 or 700 points. We'll have everybody kind of closer together.
It's an interesting thesis.
So I think Williams is going to be 9th. They'll have a decent points haul, but I think we're going to see some potential fireworks between Albon and Sainz, and we're going to see potentially the driver who knows how the team works and the driver that wants the team to do something different, and them struggle to develop their way around that.
It's a good thesis. So just to clarify, you think, so they got 17 points last season. You think they potentially could double that and still finish 9th?
Yes.
Get 34 points?
Yes.
It's not a bad prediction. It's not where my mind is going, but I see what you're doing here, and you might be right.
Because think about where we left off at the end of last year, right? Where Alpine was at the bottom of the pack early on. And then by the end, they were on podiums.
Yeah.
There are circumstances around it, but that's why I think we're going to have a competitive season, right? Because the competitive season doesn't mean that we have 1, 2, 3 being the top 3 drivers of that year every race, right? We're going to see DNFs, we're going to see disqualifications, we're going to see all this, and we're going to see truly competitive cars fighting. We know that these cars can fight now. Most tracks. Monaco is the exception, which we should touch on what they're talking about for Monaco.
We'll do that for 5-1, right before 5-1.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get more mixed grids like we saw at the end of last year. It was no longer processional 2x2x2. And then, yes, I think Williams could get a haul of 40, 50, 60 points and still finish ninth.
Jeez. 60 points and come ninth?
Potentially.
You see, I'm not thinking that at all. I am thinking Williams can get, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm thinking they can get over 100 points, not finish ninth. But like you're thinking, because like I'll say, I think Sauber at ninth, in my opinion, is if they're lucky, 25 points, but that's still ninth. Mm-hmm. So we are thinking kind of similar. I just think you're thinking even more extreme than me.
Yeah.
Wow. So we talked about this, just me and you, a couple weeks ago. Sainz has always thrived at being the underdog at his teams. Do you think he's the underdog right now? But the way you've described it, it sounds like he is.
I don't. So, I don't think that he thinks that. I think a lot of people are saying he's coming in, it's Albon's team, he has to prove himself. I think he goes in there thinking, I'm Carlos Sainz, former Ferrari driver. I'm the one that needs to be catered to.
I don't. Just to that point, I don't know if you saw they've La VS went over this on YouTube. They've basically re-engineered Carlos's steering wheel to be like the one at Ferrari. So he didn't steal tech. He just went off memory and said, "This is the steering wheel I had at Ferrari." They've given him that at Williams.
Sure.
Still, you think it's not enough?
No, but I think that's exactly it. He went into the team and said, "This isn't good enough. This needs to be this way." The steering wheel, it's a matter of driver comfort, right? He can't add functions that they don't have. So it's not that he's stolen tech. He said, this button's been here. This is how we did this. This is how I want it. It's quite possible that Albon has his steering wheel that is drastically different to Sainz.
But it won't make a difference.
It'll make a difference in driver comfort. Functionality is all the same.
That's a very good point. I like where you're going with this, and that's bold. Bold that they get 60 points and finish ninth. I like where your head's at. I hope we see something like that, but I don't know.
I'm trying to be optimistic. If they can do that, I haven't run the numbers on it, but that means every race you have good action and a mixed up grid.
We might see that, and we'll talk about this more in a bit. We might see that simply because there's 6 rookies where they shouldn't be.
Exactly.
That's a good point. Anything else you want to add to that? I like that prediction. I like your reasoning. I disagree, but it's not for a lack of logic on your part.
Sure. So I think I'm done for Williams in number 9.
Who do you got 8?
It's got to be Haas.
Wow.
I want to see them do better, but I don't think they will. And I don't think they will because of their driver lineup. I think the car will be there. I have no faith in Ocon. None.
It's not a bad logic, yeah.
He's proven that he can get up there when the circumstances are in his favor. Wet races where people crash, he can get up there. But I think he's going in there thinking he's better than he is. And the team is going to fall apart around him because of that. Because he's an egotistical little shit.
Man, that's a really good point.
And then Behrman's just happy to be there and doesn't know what the fuck. He's like a dog that's caught his tail. He doesn't know what to do with it.
To that point, did you? I'm sorry to interrupt, but did you see Oliver Behrman's interview for Formula1.com, where he was talking about his alleged goals of the season?
I didn't see that. No.
So the entire article headline is Behrman outlines his goals for the season. There is none. He's just saying, "I'm hungry for more." That's not a goal. How many points do you think you can score? Do you think the car's good? Do you understand where the car's going development-wise? What do you think the direction of this team is? You're absolutely right. He's just there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to disagree with you, as we'll find out, but you're not wrong about Ocon. You're not wrong at all. I won't say what I think, but every time he's followed Hülkenberg, whether at Force India, Renault, and now Haas, he's always done better. But if your prediction is correct, he could do better and still be low.
Mm-hmm.
If the midfield is condensed.
Yeah.
You and I have similar thinking. We both think it's going to be a tight race because like 10 to 6, 10 to 5, it's anybody's game. Would you be surprised if you saw, so far you have Sauber, Williams, Haas. Would you be surprised if they went any higher? All three of those teams?
It wouldn't surprise me if Williams was higher. I can see Haas maybe one place higher. The problem with that is I look at the teams that are remaining now, and I don't see them going lower.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all.
But again, this is all pre-testing. So we don't know anything. For all we know, Red Bull's built a turd.
Well, that's why I think we should do it. I think we should do based on what we saw from last season, what we think is going to happen. And then after testing, we'll have some different types of preseason predictions.
Sure.
Anything else you want to say about Haas? That's bold. They're going to finish one position lower without Hülkenberg and Magnussen.
I hope they do better. I hope Haas shows that they're a serious team now and they have what it takes, because I sincerely want Toyota to latch on to something that wants to bring them back to F1. And if that's, hey, I can get a Toyota driver into F1 and build an engine and do all this in the next 10 years, I think Toyota could be a force to be reckoned with, like they were up to a point last time they were in.
They gave us Jensen Button. I don't know if that's a good thing.
They gave us potentially one of the best cars that we never saw.
The hybrid.
No, they left F1 at the end of whatever season it was. 2009, but they had already built a 2010 car. And that 2010 car was allegedly an amazing car. But they didn't have the money and they didn't have the will to run the team anymore, so they just canned it all. That car went on to set a record at the Bonneville Salt Flats for high speed.
Wow.
I think they did have a couple of track outings, but obviously not homologated in F1 because it wasn't an F1 car properly. So they got some impressive data out of it, but no one is claiming it was legal to F1 standards, right? So take it with a pinch of salt, but apparently Toyota was going to be a real contender in 2010.
And to your point, people forget in 2010 how close they were to bankruptcy. They got affected by the financial crisis probably just as much as GM and...
Everybody did, yes.
Yeah, but they were... I remember it was touch and go. They're a powerhouse now, but it was touch and go for a while. So you're right, like they couldn't afford F1.
You say they're a powerhouse now, but they've actually... There's been a lot of restructuring at Toyota, and the head of Toyota stepped down a couple years ago, admitting that he had taken Toyota in the wrong direction. Now, obviously, this is the road car Toyota, because their motorsport division is separate. So, yes, they're a powerhouse in the fact that they have cash on hand. They're not going bankrupt, but they have made a wrong turn recently. So they're reassessing, and part of Mr. Toyota's stepping down was handing the reins of the company over to somebody younger who understood the audience that they need to target. So hopefully that means they end up coming into F1. And if that's through partnership with Haas, I think that's a great opportunity.
They have a lot of options, Haas and Alpine, because Alpine will probably need engines. And I can't imagine Mercedes is going to want to give it to them forever. But we'll see.
They're paying for it.
All right. Anything else on Haas? You're 8?
Nope.
All right. So I chose this route because 8 and 7 to me are interchangeable. I was going to do a gimmick here and flip a coin, but I won't. After some serious soul searching, I'm going to put Alpine 8th. For the simple fact that, if, like we said already, if not for Brazil, they do not finish 6th last year.
That's
Gatsby, you were fired, so get out of here. You're not allowed to be part of this podcast anymore for everybody listening and hearing the clomping as usual. Producer Gatsby's trying to work here again, but he was fired. He's asked to leave the building now. Sean, you got the security guard?
No.
We don't have a security guard. Who have I been talking? I've been talking to... Okay, anyways.
That's the carbon monoxide, Nick.
Oh, I was wondering. Yeah, I was feeling a little lightheaded. Anyways, it's... Alpine was never going to finish sixth last year. It was a miracle that they finished sixth. A miracle of Brazil. That race masked a lot of problems for a lot of teams. V-Carb included. Alpine was another. And Red Bull, I think that was their saving grace to help them move forward. But more on that later.
Sorry, I'm trying to remember back to Brazil. Was that another rain incident? What happened in Brazil?
One of the best races of all time, you've forgotten, when Max Verstappen came back.
I remember that it was good. I don't remember why.
Max Verstappen came back from 12th. Remember red flag in qualifying?
Yeah.
Max had to slow down, started 12th, started raining, came back, won by 19 seconds. Lando said it was all luck.
Sure. I guess I'll have to go back and watch it.
The red flag. One of the best races of all time. Anyways, Alpine comes second and third in that race. And they got 33 points in that weekend, which propelled them from a clear ninth to a sixth, almost a fifth for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that happens again. Especially with... Gasly is good enough to have a race like that, but not Doohan. And definitely not Colapinto when he replaces him. So Doohan didn't have a good start in Abu Dhabi, and I just think the writing's on the wall there, unfortunately. And it's not fair to him. He deserves the full season. But I think that realization by Briatore that he's destroyed the Alpine junior program again by signing Colapinto to, Sean, was it 2 seasons? No, it was 5.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
It was a rhetorical question.
Sure.
What a ridiculous contract for a reserve driver. So it's clear he's going to come in at some point, and they're going to realize he's not much better than Doohan. He's good. I like Colapinto, and I think he's pretty good. Alpine's not the team for him.
I would agree with that. The one thing I would say is that for everybody involved, Alpine, Doohan, Colapinto, and everybody that watches F1, if it's 5 races, make it 5 races. Because if Doohan can't compete, and Gasly is firmly mid-pack, and Doohan is pinned to the bottom, we don't want to see that.
Yeah.
If it's 5 races and he's not performing, get him the fuck out of there.
Yeah. The quote-unquote most prepared rookie. You're absolutely right. If it's not happening right away, get it done.
Yeah. Don't make us suffer through mediocre performances. We don't want to see people pinned to the back.
No.
Nick and I joke about, Sauber is going to be pinned to the back, but that's for other reasons. It's not entertaining to see them there.
No. And let's, fingers crossed, hope doesn't happen the way it did last year. Because, they were 19th, 20th almost every race.
A second off the pace on a good day.
Well, that was just show. Anyways, Gasly could do something with that team, and he was, but let's just keep in mind that Qatar 5th was also a clusterfuck of a race. Otherwise, he was generally in the 7th to 10th range. So I don't think that's good enough to get too high. If it's consistent, maybe, but it's not going to be. So I'm thinking 8th there. And to the Doohan point, the 5th race is Miami. Is it Miami? Yeah, no, it's China. So it stays in that area. And then the 6th race is Miami. He probably will be gone after China. So I think it's Australia, Japan.
No. I'm going to pull it up here, but Japan is after the Middle East.
I think so. I think because they changed the schedule up.
Yeah, and I remember you and I talked about it a couple weeks ago that it didn't make sense where Japan fell because they went to the Middle East and back. So I think it's Australia, China, the Middle East.
You're right. You're Australia, China, Bahrain, Saudi.
Nope. I'm an idiot.
Oh, wow.
Australia, China, Japan, Bahrain, Saudi.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, but it's still stupid because they go east and then back west. So that you're right. You were on the right track. It's just Japan is more east, and then they go back west.
Yeah. And what we were talking about is stupid is that we have 2 weeks. 2 weeks between China and Japan, and then 1 week between Japan and Bahrain.
That is silly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. It's going to be cold in Japan.
And rainy. I think we talked about it last year. It could be cool because it's very rainy.
Yeah, early April.
So we'll see. We'll see how that works. But the point is, more than likely, Duhan doesn't make it to Miami.
Which is May, the
Yeah.
beginning of May.
But it's after the Middle East leg.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he even makes it to the Middle East. They just keep him in that sphere, Australia, China, Japan, and they're like, listen, you're done.
Now, something to consider. By the time preseason testing is done, they have to get stuff shipped out. And if I'm remembering this correctly, the logistics of it all works out so that everything up until Saudi, so Saudi included, needs to go out prior to the start of the Australian Grand Prix, because they're going to ship chassis to the Pacific for Australia, China, Japan, and then they've got to ship chassis and spares and everything else out to the Middle East. So all that goes out right before Australia, basically, which is going to be, if anything is specific to Duan, so seats, pedal boxes, whatever, cockpit related for the driver, that's all fixed. So it would make sense that Miami is the place to change, because that's likely where you have the opportunity to make that change without too much hassle.
And that makes sense for a 5-race contract then.
Yeah.
And you were even saying, when we talked about this at the end of last season, it makes no sense that they would put all this money in just for 5 races on Duhan, but I don't know.
It's a logical changeover from a logistics standpoint.
All right, Jack, enjoy your first 5 races.
Only 5 races?
Only 5 races, yeah. Poor guy. I feel for him. It's not fair. Give
Sure.
him a season. If you really believed in him, give him a season.
But you know what? He's getting a shot. If he impresses, I'm sure they'll keep him.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, get him out of there.
Had a bad start in Abu Dhabi, so let's see. I'll give him a chance. Anyways, yeah, Alpine still have the slowest engines. Are really still focusing on 2026 to get the Mercedes engine. I just don't see much from them this year, and that's that.
Sure.
7 is Aston Martin. I'm going back with them again. I'm running it back. I said 6 last year instead of 5th. They finished 5th, I think, by the grace of God. But they were not good towards the end of last season. The only reason I'm giving them 7th and not 9th, which was my original prediction for them, I changed it over, is because I think Newey will make enough of an effect that they will jump back up the ranks towards mid to end of season. I think he will give some of an effect because Lawrence is in win now mode. And even though Newey is focusing on next season, they're going to see how bad they're doing. And Newey's going to start giving some feedback for this season. And I think it will be enough for them to make that a little bit of a jump. They also, for some reason, and I don't know why, maybe we should look into this, all Middle Eastern Grand Prix, they score a lot of points. The heat seems to help their car. But not Singapore, which is interesting.
It's a road track.
But they were good in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, but Saudi Arabia is a clusterfuck in itself. They've basically built they've basically built roads around a racetrack.
Yeah. Stupid Grand Prix. Yeah. Anyways, you made a great point last season, which is Newey is going to come into that team, think highly of Fernando Alonso, hear Fernando's first feedback, and go, "What the fuck did you just say?" Mm-hmm. What was it in the interview? If you want to, do you remember the quote? I didn't. You didn't help my car. I just drove it better.
Yeah, it was the interview with Paul Moynihan from Red Bull when he was at Renault. And Fernando had all sorts of problems, and they spent a bunch of time fixing things, legitimately making changes that he asked for. And he went out and got a better time, and they asked him his feedback on the updates, and he said, "Oh, the car still feels terrible. I just drove it better."
Thanks, Fernando. Great job.
You pull that shit with Newey and see how long you last.
not long, and the rumor is he's trying to get Lance Stroll out circa now.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I disagree with you about the Newey topic. I think he's going to go in there and say, you guys have made your bed, you lay in it for this year. In the sense that there is a shit ton of work to do for next year. They haven't been able to touch the actual design up until this year. So he's got to get on it to do his thing properly because he's no longer got the team around him that he had, right? So he's going to be focused. And yeah, Lawrence Stroll is in the win now mode, but you have to remember that Newey has equity in the team. Newey is a part owner of the team now.
Which is good to keep Lawrence at bay.
Right. And I'm not sure if you've ever listened to an interview with Newey or have heard his personality come out. He's not an arrogant person like Lawrence can come off as, but he is very firm in what he knows to be correct. And he's not someone who's going to back down just because Lawrence, uses his authoritarian power and voice to intimidate him. Newey's not going to give a shit because Newey knows what he's doing is going to get them where they want to go. So I don't think he's going to have any impact this year.
Then they may even finish worse than that. Maybe I should put him 8th, put Alpine 7th, but I can't do that in good conscience. Yeah. Like I said, originally I thought they'd be 9th because of that, but I'm thinking at least he has an effect on some of the upgrades mid-season. They go forward in even a small direction. And Fernando's good enough that he can at least finish 6th to 10th. Not as good as he thinks he is. You make a really good point, though. You make a really, really good point. He's going to be like, listen, you hired me for this. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm going to do.
Yep.
Have you heard what Honda's saying about their 2026 engine?
They're worried about it, right?
Yeah, they're tempering expectations. Mm-hmm. Might be another GP2 engine moment coming next year.
And everybody, all engine manufacturers, should be doing exactly that right now. Because it is a step in the unknown. They're working on their engines and they're very early in developing them. And it is a completely different animal. So from a technical standpoint, Honda's being realistic. And frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if it took them a few years to get up to speed.
Yeah, I think nobody comes out 2026 a clear favorite. Maybe Mercedes, who seems very confident. But
now, one thing I will say is that Honda is going to be partnering with Aston Martin, and they have a familiar face in Newey there, which people think of Newey as an aerodynamicist, which he is. But he has such a technical grasp on the basic principles of engineering that he knows what to do when it comes to the engines. He's not an engine designer. He's not going to design anything for Honda, but he's going to work with them to get them to where they were. All right, and this is one of the things that he commented on when they started partnering with Toro Rosso, and moving from McLaren to Toro Rosso, is that McLaren gave them very tight constraints over what they could do with the engine, the packaging, everything else. And then when Newey got involved after they left McLaren, he basically said, you tell me what you want and I will build you a race-winning car around that engine. And that kind of mentality and understanding how these things interact with each other is what's going to get them over the hump. Because one thing a lot of people don't realize is the only reason we have V6s in F1 instead of 4 cylinders is Adrian Newey.
Why is that?
Because he looked at it and said, this is stupid. If we have a 4-cylinder, we can't make it a stressed member. So right now, the chassis ends at the firewall between the survival cell and the engine.
Survival cell being the cockpit for the driver.
Yes.
Okay.
So you've got the cockpit, you've got the gas tank, the firewall, engine. Mm-hmm. The engine mounts to the chassis, the transmission mounts to the engine, the suspension mounts to the transmission. That's a stressed member. It's a V6, so it provides a sufficient amount of surface area and strength that it can do that. If you take one of those banks away and you make it 4 cylinders straight down the middle, it's not strong enough to do that. Right? That's the level of system thinking that Newey has. So yes, he's an aerodynamicist, but he's also a brilliant engineer. So he understands what it's going to take to get a good engine out of that and a good package. So I think Honda, they're tempering expectations, and they should, but they've got a step up in the fact that they've got a solid partner with Newey.
There you go. That's a great explanation, and that actually changes my thinking for 2026. So thank you for that. Still put them 7th because you're right. They've made their bed. They're one of the worst teams. I think they'll get enough points in the Arab Grand Prix to get them to 7th. I think Alpine in 8th, it's 30 points if they're lucky. That's my thinking. So Aston Martin at 40 gets 7th. I'm legitimately thinking that low because they went two something. I think it was 270 in 2023 to 92, 30, 40 points this year.
Okay.
We will see. But yeah, I like your thinking though. It's changing my thought process for this year that Newey's going to come in and be like, hey, I'm not here to help you now. So yeah, Alpine 8th, Aston Martin 7th. To me, they're interchangeable. They could finish either position. Who do you have for your 7th and your 6th to end the episode?
So this has been good for me because I had an idea for 7th and 6th, and now talking through that with you has changed that. So I'm going to agree with you. I think Austin is 7th. I was going to put them 6th, one place down from last year, again, thinking that they're going to move back. But I think based on what we've just discussed, there's another team that is going to place higher than them. So I'm dropping them back 2 places. I would argue that they're probably one of the worst driver lineups.
Aston Martin?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we said it last year. Newey's going to try and get rid of Stroll, and in that process, he's going to realize, wait a minute, Fernando's a problem too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think he legitimately wants to work with Fernando, but I don't see that going very well.
How could it? How could it? You're right. One of the best engineers of all time comes into a guy who thinks he knows everything. It's Horner.
Who thinks he knows everything, but is very clear that he doesn't know anything about engineering. He's never claimed to know anything about vehicle design. He just knows how to drive.
And sorry, there was a report too. I forgot to bring this up with Saudi. Sebastian Vettel approached Aston Martin last year, and Sauber, and apparently Red Bull. Marco confirmed this and said, I want to come back. Could you imagine Newey with Vettel this year? Why the hell is Fernando in this car? And why the hell did Aston Martin say no? You saw what he left you for 2023. Why not try it again? I know he's 2 years out of the sport. I know he's an annoying little bitch at times, but he is good at car development.
Mm-hmm.
And Sauber, shame on you. Shame on you, Andreas Seidel. You had a choice between Vettel, who approached before the season, and Hülkenberg, and you chose Hülkenberg. No wonder you got fired.
Just to play devil's advocate, I'll put it out there that I'm sure Seb doesn't want nothing in return. I'm sure Seb is a very expensive driver to have. Not saying he needs the money, but he has a name and a reputation, and that commands a dollar value.
So Sauber's sitting drinking at the bar. An expensive prostitute comes up to him and says, hey, come back to the hotel with me for $10,000. And they're like, well, I'm already talking to this odd-looking blonde. Might as well go home with her. She's free. That's what you're saying.
There are so many other ways you could have landed that analogy, but okay.
This is who I am, Sean. I'm proud of who I am. Anyways, good point. Well made on Aston Martin. Do you have anything else you want to say on them?
No, I think we beat that one.
We did. We did analyze that pretty well, I think. So you're 6 to end the episode.
Alpine.
Wow.
And this can't end the episode because you don't have a 6th.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's your last input in this episode.
There we go. Yeah. I'm going to put Alpine up there. They have a Mercedes engine.
Next year.
Oh, fuck, you're right.
You want to change where Alpine is? I'll give you one change.
Nope, I'm still going to do it.
To your point, you said it last year. They were one of the biggest development improvements throughout the year.
Yes. And they've made what a lot of people have deemed a curious choice to reuse last year's chassis. Right? All these guys have come out with new chassis and whatever, but Alpine has said, listen, we're trying to save some money. We're not developing from scratch. And at the end of last year, the chassis wasn't bad. Yeah, it was a piece of shit when we started, but we spent a shit ton of money getting it to this. So we're going to use it and we're going to continue. So yeah, we may see them down the pack again at the beginning of the year, but at least they understand the car.
That's a good point.
Right? One of these teams that we're putting fairly high up the list is going to come out and look like absolute garbage and have no idea why the fuck that is. Whereas Alpine's going to be there going, oh yeah, okay, we're slow, but we're slow because we haven't tried to do anything new. We know what we need to do to get faster.
It's a fair point. You're right. Instead of going into an unknown, like a season with an unknown quantity, they have a known quantity. If it stinks, we can build from there.
Yes. And if someone does shit the bed, they've already got a leg up.
And you're talking about the drivers.
No, I'm talking about other teams. So if Mercedes comes out and they've gone the complete wrong way again, on a technical standpoint,
that's who you're talking about.
They're going to be down down the roster, and Alpine will be ahead of them because they understand the car.
That 20 minus 20 horsepower though is daunting for a whole entire season. And like we said, there's probably not going to be another race like Brazil.
If they've been smart, they've gotten that power back up in the off season.
This is the French Ferrari we're talking about. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just trying to be devil's advocate because you were devil's advocate with me. I like where you're thinking with this. I could easily see Alpine finishing sixth. I'm conservative estimate with them.
Sure.
They've been 6 2 years in a row. They were fourth in 2022. This is not a bad team. But I think this year their luck rounds out.
This team has been world champions.
Yeah, 20 years ago. But
sure.
It's not a bad prediction. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, not for Alpine.
Not for Alpine. All right, and to end the episode, Haas is sixth for me. Now, originally I had them fifth. But based on what I said about the Bierman interview, based on what you said about Ocon, which is brilliant, it was a great analysis that he's just not really that good. They've basically got a version of Kevin Magnussen who isn't completely useless. He is useless, but he's the version of Kevin Magnussen who could win a race and get more than one podium in his career.
He's not going to get himself banned for a race.
Well said.
For his own doing.
The team might ban him for the way he treats Behrman.
Or the team.
This is Komatsu's blind spot, is his driver picks. He valued Ocon. He sought out Ocon when Bottas, Perez, Ricciardo were just sitting there. If this team had Ricciardo, Bottas, Perez, Bottas, I understand Perez was probably not a reasonable signing for the money that Red Bull was offering. But just, I'm speaking hypothetically. Had they have waited to the end of the season to get their driver lineup, they could have had Bottas, Ricciardo for nothing. And if those two are in that Haas, I legitimately think they could have finished fourth this year.
I don't, but okay.
But to your point, Behrman and Ocon is not a good driver lineup. Behrman's just there. We'll get to that in our over-under predictions episode. And Ocon, I think he'll do better than Hülkenberg, but by how much?
Well, let me ask you this then. Do you think Behrman and Ocon are a better driver lineup than Magnussen and Grosjean?
Excellent question. It's probably the same. And that team finished fifth once.
Right.
So it's feasible.
If they have a good car and the will to win, it's feasible.
Komatsu has done wonders with this team. They are now self-funded. Gene Haas doesn't have to put any money in this team. They have a lot of input from Toyota. They have their own simulator. They're going in the right direction. I think his blind spot is his drivers, and I think this year we see peak Komatsu. In the sense that they realize, like, he's really good, but we're missing something to go further. And there's a driver, I don't know if you saw the last 2 episodes of Formula, not driver, but a team principal, former team principal, last 2 episodes of Formula for Success. Who was on them?
I've been listening to him out of sequence, so.
Otmar Safnauer.
Oh, yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
He is just sitting there. Been at good teams, won with underdog teams, won a race with a Racing Point, was kicked out by Lawrence Stroll ridiculously because he said, I can't win right now for you, but I could win for you in 5 years. Was fired for that statement.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous. Went to Alpine and said, give me 100 races. They gave him 33.
Mm-hmm.
He's a really good team principal in the sense that he can coordinate a good group of people and do decent work with it.
Yeah, well, I think in that episode he was talking about BAR, right? Because he came into BAR as one of the... Was it BAR or was it...
No, it was BAR, you're right. Yeah.
One of the original founders of BAR. I never realized that because prior to late Force India, you never heard of Otmar Safnauer.
Yeah.
But he's been behind the scenes working and building that team. And for those that don't know, BAR was a potentially race-winning team. They had some success, who ended up becoming Honda, which then became Braun, which is now Mercedes.
Exactly.
So that entire facility at Brackley that Mercedes is based in was started by Safnauer and 2 other people that founded BAR.
From the British American Tobacco Company. That was the influence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said it in that episode that car could have been a race-winning car. It just had major reliability problems.
Mm-hmm.
We underestimated how much it was going to take to stay on the road.
Yeah. At a time in F1 when reliability was a joke.
Yeah.
You had an engine per race, basically.
Mm-hmm. And he said too, yeah, we could finish 7th to 10th really easily, but points were 1st to 6th.
Right.
Kind of messed with them, yeah. I'm saying that, not that Komatsu needs to be replaced. I think he belongs in engineering. That's his specialty. So put him back there. He has limits as a team principal, whereas he values Behrman and Ocon as his drivers. He was Romain Grosjean's personal engineer, not a compliment.
I don't know that that's correct, though. So he's a good engineer, but I think as team principal, he has what Steiner didn't in the sense that he has a proper understanding of engineering and what it takes to develop. So he's going to put the money into that. So I think that is a great role for him to be in now. I don't buy into this. He's an engineer. He should be in a technical role. Engineers can do other things.
Okay, so I'm saying it wrong, but yeah, go on.
So I think team principal is the right place for him. He just now needs to backfill the engineering with more competent engineers.
And that's what I'm saying. Remember we said when Binotto was fired in 2022, he should have stayed in the engineering department? That's what I mean. In the sense that you are great in this area. You're not necessarily the best in this area.
And that's where I understand what you're saying, and I still disagree with you.
Okay. But I'm not shitting on engineers. I'm saying if you had a powerhouse of both of them with Safnauer and him, sky's the limit, because Safnauer can push back and say, why the fuck do we have Esteban Ocon and Oliver Behrman?
Yeah, and frankly, that's where something like a sporting director comes in.
So you think Safnauer would be a really good sporting director?
Yeah, sporting director, team manager, executive, whatever you want to call him. I think he has a place. But he's also been linked to some of these other bids to get onto the grid from other teams.
High Tech and Cadillac, stuff like
that? Not necessarily Cadillac, but the other team that's been bandied around, which we don't know is High Tech or somebody else.
He'll be good either way, is what I'm getting at, Safnauer. And I think Haas should consider him in their position. He's American with a European... He was born in Romania.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a European understanding, American accent. You want more Americans in this sport for an American team. Think about it. Anyways, yeah, obviously we already talked about it. Their greatest weakness is their drivers. That's why I'm not putting them fifth. I can't in good conscience do that. But Haas, after a year after putting some of his money in to get this team on the right track, is now able to just own it and not put as much money of his own money, because they're self-funded properly, not say by Uralkali or what was that energy drink company in 2019 that Steiner bragged about. Yeah,
Rich Energy.
Yeah, he sucks. I like where they're going. I think they're going to go in the right direction. I just don't think they're going to make a huge jump this year. But we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, I think that ends part 1. And we'll be back next week with 5th to 1.
All right.
I'm intrigued to see you. I've kept count of who you have 5th to 1, and I'm intrigued to see where you put some of these teams. But we'll talk about it then. So F1 Philosophy on Spotify and YouTube. Please like and subscribe. And we'll probably get that, what's it called? Fantasy League going soon. But we'll keep you posted on that.
Yeah, I guess we got to do that.
Yeah, we got to do work. It's annoying.
Yeah. There's not enough of that already.
Anyways, we'll talk more next week.